Hello YouTube, this is Frugal, and here we are in release week for the long-awaited, much-anticipated PMDG 777. So I thought I would start my first impressions videos and then obviously fully loaded videos as soon as I can now that we're in release week. So for this first impressions, I'm not going to fly the aircraft. I'm going to kind of do what I did with, I think I did it with the Dash 8, I'm sure I did it with the DC-9, which is on the ground, showing you around, showing you some of the cool stuff in it. Normally with the first impressions, I don't know what I'm talking about. I still kind of don't, to be honest. I've got about now 100 or so hours in the 777 from the beta test, but there's so much to learn. I don't claim to be an expert. I'm sure I've missed stuff. I'm sure I've already made bad habits, but even so, I will try to give you a glimpse into what you're getting. So there are two aircraft in the 777 base package. The 777-200LR, obviously with an X on the end because it's PMDG, and the 777F, obviously again with an X on the end because it's PMDG. The F is a freighter, the 200 obviously is the passenger. Let me show you all the variations. PMDG are shipping this out with a ton of liveries, and even now as we head towards release, I'm still seeing news of more liveries coming, more liveries in development, so there are likely to still be liveries being delivered after this gets released, plus on top of that all the community developed liveries. So here's some of the liveries, of course, from the 777-200LR. So you've got the house one here. There's a neat one. I don't know if it's still in here. I know it was in some of the other betas. It's kind of gone away. They had a delivery paint scheme, which is a really ugly blue and green, which is how the aircraft are typically delivered to an airline, but that seems to have gone away. But yeah, we got the house here. Austral, British Airways, Boeing Worldliner, and so on and so on. As always with the PMDG aircraft, the liveries actually drive the configuration of the equipment in the aircraft and some of the options in the aircraft. So for example, Delta here, this Delta livery, which we're going to see in detail in a second, has been verified to be completely accurate to Delta and having all the correct equipment configurations in the aircraft that Delta do. So that's kind of cool. Some of these liveries are obviously fictional. For example, that one, British Airways, you can see they've actually tagged them as fictional. So British Airways do not fly the 200LR, so that's a fictional livery. There are a lot of fans of British Airways out there, and British Airways do fly the 777. So we're getting fictional liveries for some of these. I'm trying to remember what the other fictional ones are. I can't remember off the top of my head. There are simply so many. If we go down here to the F, then you've got community favorites like Land Cargo. What else have we got up here? There's so many, I'm getting lost. Aerologic is another big famous fan favorite. FedEx is a fan favorite, of course. So lots of liveries. I can't remember offhand how many there are. It's a lot. Anyway, let me select one of these. So I'm going to choose Delta, and we will jump into an airport, and I will show you around the outside of the aircraft and then the inside of the aircraft and talk through some of the coolness and some of the things you might find quite surprising. Okay, so here we are with the Delta 777-200LR. It's a thing of beauty. I've left the engines running, which is highly unrealistic because we're at the gate, but I wanted you to listen to the sound. So let's go up here. The reason you should listen to the sound is they have true 3D positional sound in here, so listen closely. You hear that shift? It's a very subtle shift initially, and then it becomes a lot more pronounced as you move behind the engine. And even the angle that you have to the engine changes it. That's pretty cool. Anyway, let's get back onto the model. As you can see, this is highly detailed. This is one of the approved liveries, so this is a completely accurate Delta livery for the 777-200. And the level of detail is as you would expect from PMDG. So if we go on down to the landing gear here, you can see all the hydraulic cables coming out, all the various components, everything is connected the way it should be connected. These struts here, you notice there's a slight kink, that is accurate. Completely accurate to the actual aircraft. It's really pretty crazy. Anyway, let's head on back towards the back of the aircraft here. Try not to bash my head on the wing, which I did. So very high level of detail on the texturing. Incidentally, this is funny. This actually came up in the beta. Look at that line across the top of the door there. Normally you'd see dirt lines like that because of jetways connecting to the doors, but you very rarely get jetways connecting to the right-hand doors. The reason that grubby line is there is because on the real aircraft, water can collect in these seals, I guess, and cause a bit of a grimy mark. So that's included as well. Now this has been in beta test now for about a month. We're in release week, as I said. So getting very close to launching now. Prior to it entering the wide beta, it was in the tech beta. In the tech beta, PMDG had no less than 18 pilots and engineers test this thing for accuracy. They spent a long time doing that, and it is completely accurate according to 18 real people that fly this thing every single day and work on this every single day. The attention to detail that PMDG have gone to with this is phenomenal. It's going up here to the wing. Some of you who've seen my other videos and screenshots know that the level of wing flex that PMDG have got in here is outstanding. I mean, PMDG were the innovators with wing flex, I think, in the first place. They've really gone to a whole new level with this. This is a big, heavy aircraft. And those wings do really flex at various stages of flight. Particularly in turbulence, you'll notice them bending up and bending down as they struggle to hold the aircraft up. It's going down here to this port. Lots of detail. Very high quality modeling. Now, people always ask me when I do a live stream, can I see the cabin? I'm not a big fan of showing cabin shots, and honestly I don't care if a developer doesn't spend a lot of time fixing the cabin inside. I'm very rarely going to be inside the cabin myself. I prefer to be in the cockpit, but even so, let me show you the cabin here. So there's all the seats. This is cattle class, obviously. Everybody has a little screen. There's not a high level of modeling in here, but really, who cares? It really doesn't matter. The detail is where it needs to be, which is on the external model and in the cockpit. So with that said, let's just look at this from an overhead shot. And by the way, the frame rates, people keep asking me about the frame rates on this. The first video I did was abysmal in terms of its performance. This is a very tricky aircraft to record. It's very much like the Dash 8 from Majestic. The Dash 8, those of you who have it know that it performs amazingly well, but if you try to point fraps at it or any other recording device at it, it suddenly gets a little bit jerky. It's not as pronounced with the 777. Okay, you don't get as dramatic a shift in frame rates trying to record this, but there is a sizable drop. So any jerkiness you're seeing here is actually not the aircraft. I typically, on the ground at a highly detailed airport like this is FS Dream Team's Geneva, I'm typically getting about 20 frames per second in the NGX. And here I'm looking at the fraps counter. So with fraps running externally, I'm getting 30 frames per second. So that's going to translate to about 40 or 45 frames per second without fraps running on the ground at an incredibly detailed airport. PMDG have gone above and beyond with this aircraft. They really have. Anyway, let's go into the cockpit. Okay, so here we are in the cockpit. Engines are running. We're not going to take off. We're not going to do anything crazy or anything like that. What I am going to do is shut the engines down. So before that, I'm going to quickly power up the APU here. This is the overhead. So good opportunity to show the overhead. It's a lot simpler than in the NG. It's somewhat similar in some respects in terms of its simplicity to an Airbus, and that kind of makes sense. This is almost a next generation Boeing. It's not so much like a 737 NG, which is the natural evolution of the 737, then with a modernized cockpit. This is a very modern aircraft, so everything's very simple. It's a dark cockpit concept, which means if there are lights on, that's something you need to pay attention to. So center pump pressure lights are currently on because there is no fuel in my center pumps, so I should typically turn those off. It doesn't really matter. There's no fuel in those. Let's turn the APU on. Now the APU takes a realistic amount of time to power up. So if we go back down to the pilot and command view here, you will see a notification come up here when the APU is running. So here are the glass displays, obviously. the navigation display, primary flight display here, the ICAS displays. We'll go through those in a second. I'm just waiting for that APU light to come on, and then we will shut the engines down. It's quite tempting when you first get in this to think of it as a big 737, and it is absolutely not. It is a very large aircraft, which means it handles dramatically differently to the 737 in every aspect. So taxiing is very, very different. It's very slow. That's wrong. It's very fast, but it feels very slow and lumbering on the ground. You need to be aware of it and kind of keep ahead of the aircraft. It's a bit like the MD-11 in that respect as well, because of the positioning of the nose wheel. It's slightly behind the pilot, so you're turning late, just like in an MD-11. It is not anything like a 737 in terms of taxiing. Once you get in the air, it feels very graceful, very elegant. Part of that is because of the fly-by-wire system. PMDG have modeled completely the 777's fly-by-wire system in this, and it's a joy to mess with. It really is, and you'll see that in some of the upcoming videos. There we go, APU is running, so let's go to the overhead now. So the APU is running, just checking up here. I've got no warning lights or anything like that, which I don't. So now I can go down here and I can kill the engines with these two cut-off switches down here. One. Watch for engine 1 to power down. It's going well. And 2. So getting the engine shutdown warning now. It's also giving us another warning if we're going to go flying that we've not set the landing altitude for pressurization. That's fine. Notice the length of time it took for those engines to spool down. Again, very, very accurate. As always with PMDG aircraft, they've spent a lot of time on the detail, so that is how long it takes to spool down an engine on a 777. Let's look around this cockpit a little bit. Some of this is going to look very familiar if you're familiar with Boeing's, some of it not so much. So let's look at the MCP here, or the auto flight systems. So we have flight level change here. So if we were changing altitude and coming out of VNAV, we would hit that and dial the altitude up here. We have an auto and a 1000 switch, so you can switch this and just go up thousands, or switch it to auto and go up in hundreds. It responds to the speed of clicks. The difference is here, other than the fact that the buttons are all different, auto throttle works in two ways. You arm the auto throttles. The auto throttle system, though, is not on. It is armed but not engaged. Once you get on a runway and you spool this up and you hit that toga switch on the side of the throttles, or the click spot right here, then the auto throttle is turned on. It needs to be armed in order to do that. These aircraft are typically flown a bit, again, like an Airbus. When you're flying the approach and things like that, you typically leave the auto throttle on and have the pilot just managing the attitude of the aircraft and its path and all that stuff. What else we got here? Switch here between heading and track. So to switch from a heading of 360 to track a course of 360 on the radial, that's the heading and track button. Vertical speed and FPA is there. Indicated airspeed and Mach is there. These things are obviously a little bit different to the Boeing 737. Now this is going to catch a lot of people out, and people are going to complain about it, to be honest, but this is accurate. In the NGX, if you wanted to change barometric pressure, you would put the mouse here and roll the mouse wheel. I'm rolling my mouse wheel and nothing's happening. That's not how it works in the real aircraft. Obviously you don't have a mouse, but it's not a rolly knob in the real aircraft. It is a click and hold knob in the real aircraft, and they've fixed that in the 777. So you click and hold. You can see the barometric pressure is changing there. If I move the mouse further away, it will change faster. If I want to go the other way, I can right click and hold. And of course you can single click as well, so single right click to go up by 1, single left click to down by 1. That's the same on this and this. Most of these work that way. What else have we got here? The ICAS displays. This thing. Let me change my view here. These buttons up here affect all of the displays. So currently we've selected the center display, lower center display, and I can change what is viewed down here. So currently it's on engines. I can go to stat here, which shows me hydraulics and APU and all that stuff. I can go to electrics here and see a full schematic of which electrical systems are powered, how they are powered, which are not. So you can see left and right generators are not currently powered. If I were to turn the engines on and turn those generators on, you would see these change. These icons indicate whether the gates or switches are open, closed, inoperative, and so on. Same applies to fuel. Here are the air systems. We can view the pressures and the temperatures throughout the cabin and adjust that obviously from the overhead. Doors are all automatic right now and closed. There's the gears, landing gear, landing gear tire pressures, wheel pressures, and temperatures. They do heat up. If you overwork the brakes, then you will get a nice red glow outside, and you'll see a warning come up down here as well. Flight control systems. This is a fly-by-wire aircraft. Again, I've got to compare it to an Airbus because that is also a fly-by-wire aircraft. The one most of you are most familiar with, in fact. So you have a flight control display down here, just like in the Airbus, and it's pretty dramatic how that works when you're flying as well. And then checklists. This is where it gets very, very, very cool. Let's come on down to this display. So currently my checklists are all wrong. Let's do a checklist reset here. We'll go back to normal. Reset, normal, reset all. Okay, so we go normal now. Here we go. So now the checklists are positioned at the correct phase, which is pre-flight. These are interactive. You can click on these. It's a touch screen. So you can click on these to go through them, or if the aircraft identifies that this condition is already met, it will automatically put a check mark in there to say it's already met. So if I set the parking brake, you can see the parking brake comes on and lights up. All the normal checklists are in here, so pre-flight, before start, before taxi, before takeoff, and so on. All the non-normals are in here, and this is where it gets crazy, and this is probably the biggest difference. If you get this aircraft and all you do is spend all day flying from A to B, A to B, A to B, you're really not even using, I would guess, a half of everything this add-on has to offer. The complexity really comes out of managing these things. So set up failures and try some of these failures. So for example, let's say we were flying and we had an engine failure. So we click on engines, damage, failure, shutdown or thrust, click on this. Let's say we have left engine failure. Now these are full non-normal checklists, and they're interactive. So condition, engine speed is below idle. To restart the engine if needed. Objective is to restart the engine if needed, or configure for a single engine. Thrust is lost on both engines. No, we've just lost the left engine. Okay. Left auto throttle arm switch, confirm that it is off, and then you work through all these phases, all these questions. There are multiple pages, multiple conditions that you answer yes or no to. It is amazing, and it all works exactly as it should, which is really, really a thing of beauty. Very, very much in love with this feature. This whole feature is cool. What else? Let's look at the CDUs down here. Whoops, my views are all broken for some reason. Let me fix that. Okay. CDU is somewhat similar to the one in the NGX and also somewhat different. You work through the same phases, so we're currently at LSGG. There were some things in the NGX which you do not get in the 777, so we're at LSGG, and if I go to route now, it does not copy LSGG down here. That's how it works in the real aircraft, that's how it works in PMDG's version of the aircraft. So you would need to type in down here LSGG, type that in, and then type in where you're going. Let's say we're going to go to, I don't know, Gatwick, EGKK. Great. There's the route pages. This works exactly the same as it does in the NGX. Let's activate this route. Not much to do here. We go init ref now. This works the same as it does in the NGX as well. So click on zero fuel weight. It will load the value down here, which you drop in. That then gives you your gross weight, and so on and so on and so on. Nothing surprising there. It all works as it should. Let's say we're going to end up with 2,000 reserves, which is terribly low. Cruising at 310. I'm not going to set up a full route. I just want to get to some of the other pages in here and show you these things. Thrust limit. So here's your D rates. Putting your D-rated temperature up here, or choose a preset. And then takeoff speeds. It's not going to calculate those because we don't have a full route with a VNAV, with a SID tied to VNAV. So it's not going to calculate the V1, VR, V2 speeds here, but normally it would. And then again, just like in the NGX, click these LSKs and they will get selected in. So flaps 5, center of gravity comes from the computer, and we're all set. So that's kind of cool. What else do we have up here? You saw me clicking some buttons. I'm going to go and click some more buttons, and you should listen as I do this. The sound that you get from every button differs based on all sorts of conditions, such as where you're clicking it, the speed that you're clicking these things. It's pretty radical. So if I go and shut down all the hydraulics right up here, so let's turn that one off, off, off. Oh, shut up. Hang on, listen. You hear that? Slightly different. If I click this button at the top left, you get ch. Now if I click it in the center, it's a kind of a higher pitch. Very, very subtle. Hopefully that came out very well in the video. It's very subtle, but no one switch ever no one switch ever sounds the same each time you click it, which is pretty crazy. This is a very smart aircraft as well. So powering things up like the engines, it will auto-configure itself pretty much as long as the overhead panel is in the right state. So I've just turned everything off. Let me turn everything back on here. So we've got faults up, which is normal. The engines are all off, nothing's currently running. We've got some warning lights up here as well. Notice these lights are starting to go off as the aircraft configures itself. See this? Let's go and turn some engines on. Now engine starting is very simple. You flick the switches here on to start. And that's it. Watching for N1 to rise. Let's pop outside and you can hear it. Pretty crazy. Lots of different types of sounds there. Very accurate, correct length of time. Amazing, amazing aircraft. Here it's still spooling up. Pretty crazy. Let's go back in the cockpit here. We'll start the other engine, why not? And you can hear what it sounds like in the cockpit. So back up to the overhead, start. Slowly coming up. Pretty beautiful, pretty beautiful, love it. Okay, let's go down here and look at options. People are always curious about options. So just like in the NGX, click on menu. That gets you into the options here. So we have PMDG setup and FS actions. PMDG setup is just like in the NGX, panel save, panel load. I don't have any panel states in here currently. We go to the aircraft and we can configure the equipment in here. So various equipment which really change how the aircraft handles. So I've currently got glide slope capture before localizer turned off. What that means is once I'm on the approach, I would arm the approach mode. It will catch the localizer first, then it will go onto the glide slope, so that we're in a nice configuration for landing. Let's go through the pages. All the usual stuff. Flight test package on or off. No smoking selector, we can change that. No electronics, not installed. So you know, most aircraft these days do not have smoking permitted on the aircraft, so you can change that no smoking sign in the cabin to no electronics if you really want to. It's kind of a neat touch. Whether the call outs are on. Oh, look at this, RAS is installed. This is RAS from FS to crew. It is included with the aircraft. So as you approach a runway, it will tell you approaching runway, the name of the runway. It will tell you on landing whether you're too high, too low, whether it's a long landing, a short landing. That's all built in, as it is in the real 777. Obviously not from FS to crew in the real aircraft, but it is included. There is a RAS system in the real aircraft, and FS to crew's RAS is the best out there. So that's included. You can define which call-outs you get for the approach, so approach minimums, altitude call-outs on or off, 2,500 feet, and so on. Lots of options there. In the displays, we can switch from pounds to kilograms. We're in Europe right now, so let's go to kilograms. And degrees Fahrenheit. The flight director type from split access, single queue. I mean, the level of, I keep saying the level of detail, but there's no other phrase to use. The level of detail PMDG have gone to on this aircraft is immense.
So many options. Let's head on back out. There's the failures menu. Works just the same as it always did. It's very cool. Let's go into options. I was already... Oh, no, this is cool. Let's go into simulation. So correct localizer course to FSX, on or off. Realistic autopilot engagement, on or off. Tons and tons and tons of stuff here. Realistic alignment of the IRS. Takes a few minutes to do, so be prepared to wait if you have that on realistic, as I do. Obviously some convenience options in here as well for the casual simmers. It's crazy. It's really crazy. Let's go FSX actions. Fuel loading. Here you can obviously key in the amount of fuel if you've calculated it correctly, or choose a preset like long, medium or short range. Incidentally, those of you who are familiar with the NG, let's look at this. Let's go long range. Look how much fuel is in here. Holy cow. 145,000 kilograms. It's crazy. Incidentally, a trip from Geneva to London Gatwick in this aircraft, it's a short range trip. Payload, all the usual stuff in payload. Door control. Now doors are, you have automatic, disarmed, and then open or closed. So to open a door, I would have to go and disarm it first of all. Then I would have to open it. And it's a one-way trip. So having disarmed it, I now need to open it. And then to get it back into normal automatic state, I would need to close the door. Which takes the correct amount of time, and then arm it. Obviously there's cargo doors as well as forward access panels. Let's open all this stuff up. We'll take a look outside. Yeah, we're getting warnings now because the engines are running, that's normal. Alright, so all the doors now are opened or opening. Let's pop outside and take a look. I really should stop those engines, shouldn't I? Notice the access panels are open down here. Now I know a question that's going to come up is, does this work with GSX? GSX provide their own database as to where vehicles need to be to load the meals on board, to load the cargo on board. Obviously this isn't released and GSX don't have it, so currently no, GSX doesn't work. You would need to build a manual configuration. I am certain the awesome guys that run the GSX app and the databases will be setting this up, setting their app up to work with this very quickly after release. So that's all of that. Lots of warnings up now. Let's go and close those cargo doors and see if we can actually see them. Notice the lock coming down now? There's that level of detail thing again. Other options in here which are kind of unique down on the CDU are colors. You can change the colors of the lights in the cockpit. I don't actually know whether that's realistic. I think it is. Let me find out where that is. I always get lost as to where that is. PNDG setup, options. Yeah, it's up here, colors. So if you wanted to change the color of the sky, for example, in the PFD, or the floodlights or whatever else, you can do that right here. And it's using RGB values. So people are going to be hitting websites to figure out RGB values. Let's say I wanted a red sky, so we're flying up in Mars right now. Not realistic, I know, but you get the point, right? So 255 for red. Oh, that's a nice pink sky. Let's take that. There you go. We have a pink sky now. It's pretty crazy. Some other neat stuff down here on the CDU. So much to see. Sorry about that jerkiness there. That is actually EasyDock and me, not the aircraft. Alright, other stuff. Ground operations. Now I don't want this video to go on for 3 hours, so I'm not going to run this, but if we go ground ops, look at this. This is amazing. You can define a turnaround on the ground, so we can say that a turnaround time is 1 hour. We can set in the amount of fuel that we're going to need, the amount of time it takes to refuel, and then the aircraft will go through its refueling and everything else properly. It will not be configured for a pushback until 55 minutes after we start this whole procedure, which is very cool. We used to have in the beta that pushback was automatic. The beta testers requested that be changed, and Robert Randazzo himself actually coded this. Now we have a switch to define whether pushback automatically happens at the end of 55 minutes, or whether it's a manually started procedure. So manual is what most people will use. That's very cool. Ground maintenance here. We can refill the fluid levels, so hydraulics, engine oil, and so on and so on. Obviously, we also have maintenance-based failures in this aircraft, just like in the NGX. So if you want to be really realistic, then you can have the aircraft track how you're flying it, and over time degrade and have random failures. Well, not random, they're actually caused by you, which is very cool as well. So that's really all there is to it. We're coming up on way over half an hour on a simple first impressions, just looking at the aircraft. It is that complex. There's one question I want to answer before we go away though. Why is this so cool? Why is this so much better than the NGX? Why is the world going nuts over this? That's so difficult to answer. It is cool, and it is better, and it is different to the NGX because of, well, first of all, the aircraft, the flight characteristics of the aircraft are radically different. It's a fly-by-wire aircraft, and it's phenomenal how that works. We have asynchronous thrust compensation in this, which means if your thrust levers are a little out of whack, then the fly-by-wire system will compensate for that and level you off, which is great. If you put an aircraft into, if you power up an aircraft, so you're flying along at a fixed set of power and you give it more power, most aircraft will climb. The fly-by-wire system will compensate for that and level you off. Similarly, if you drop the power, most aircraft will nose down. This will try to hold your current speed for as long as it can. It's pretty cool. So all that is in there. The level of modeling on failures and procedures in this is far beyond anything we've ever seen before. Far beyond anything we've ever seen before. It's crazy. The touchscreen ICAS displays, the ability to walk through all those non-normals and resolve conditions in flight is incredible. The built-in checklists are incredible. The touchscreen is incredible. You don't get that stuff in the NGX. So on an aircraft level, it is a very, very different aircraft to the NGX. And when you get this, guys, don't presume you know how to fly it because you've flown the NGX. It is so different, it's not even funny. So on an aircraft level, it's a different plane, completely different plane. On a systems and a modeling and a simulation level, this is the evolution of PMDG. Every aircraft those guys develop improves on the previous one. And it's radical, the things that they do and how they improve. We saw when they came out with the J41, for example, icing and all that being modeled, which had not been done before. We saw with the NGX complex systems. Like, this is the same. It measures the length of time hydraulic fluid will take to flow from point A to point B, and built into that is obviously some taking into account the temperature of that fluid, the ambient temperature, and so on and so on. That's all in this as well, but then we have this incredibly detailed electronic fly-by-wire system, the computers that run the whole aircraft. That is all modeled in here as well. It is a step above anything they've ever done before. And then the performance. The NGX was a good performer compared to, say, the 747. The 777 is a great performer compared to the 737. Yes, this is a good aircraft to get excited by. I think you're going to very much enjoy it. I'm sorry I keep saying by the way. Oh, one little gotcha. If you're flying on VATSIM, notice this mic light. That needs to be on. This is how you select which radio is active, or which radio display, so left, center, and right. If you're on VATSIM and you tune in a frequency here, you need to select that mic. If it's turned off like that, then they won't be able to hear you. The mics only work when that mic switch is enabled, which is accurate as well. Anyway, as always, my name is Frugal. Thank you for watching. In the next set of videos on this, we're going to jump straight into Fully Loaded. So I'm going to do a fully loaded series of videos of this, flying a route. I missed autocruise. Let me just show you this real quick. Oh my goodness, so much to show you. Autocruise. This is a long-haul aircraft. It holds the world record for the longest ever flight. To cope with that, since most people are not going to want to spend 18 hours sitting in front of their computer managing a flight, we have auto compression. All you got to do is turn that on, like so. Once you start climbing, once you get into the cruise, the sim will automatically speed up time compression to make the flight go by faster. And it's smart. If you encounter turbulence, it will drop out of that. If you have a complex series of turns coming up, it will drop out of that. It's actually very cool. It's very reliable, and it's something I never thought I would use, but I do. So anyway, there's that. Anyway, sorry, as I was saying, my name is Frugal. Thank you for watching. Next set of videos will be fully loaded. I've not decided on a route yet, whether it will be a real-time, fairly short haul, or a accelerated long haul. So keep watching this channel to find out more. Thanks, guys.